Our girl is destitute.
What conspiracy theory do you have?
You're the Feyre.
I'm Feyre. He hates Tamlin. He's also a bit of a petty bitch.
And yet, she decides, let me just shoot my shot and see it. I'm like, girl. Hi, spoiler friends.
Hi, spoiler friends, gossip queens.
I feel like this is like, no offense to our non-spoiler friends, but like this is the party people, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, because we can
Yeah.
queen out.
Oh, we can go full chaos mode. I feel
Oh
like
my
on this
God.
one. I feel like we rein ourselves in for the non-spoiler, and I feel like the spoiler section is the sort of like, let him fly, let him go free.
Fly, you fools.
Exactly.
Real quick though, one thing I wanted to bring up before we get into it is just because I know like there are some people here who are discovering this through like not knowing us or knowing people we know, which is so exciting. Hi. Hi,
Hi.
new friends, by the way.
Hi, new friends.
So excited you're here.
Mhm.
Can't believe that you're here. Like, oh my
Seriously.
God, it's so
I
cool.
know.
But in case you are new and you're just like finding us out in the wild, so this is part 2 to every episode we put out every week. So part 1 is the spoiler-free episodes for our friends who haven't read ACOTAR. But if you have read it, we actually still encourage you, if you feel called, to listen to that part because that's more of like a deep literary analysis. And what's really cool is like, you've read ACOTAR at this point like 4 times. This is your
Mhm.
5th reread, right?
This is my 4th reread.
4th reread. This is my first reread, and we're still finding like things we never realized while going through it again. So, it's for like that's the episode that's for everyone. This is the
Mhm.
episode that's for like only people who don't want things spoiled. So it's
Mhm.
also the more like we've said gossipy one.
Yeah.
So they have a different flavor to them each, but all
Mhm.
this to say, again, if you feel called, we encourage you to go listen to the first half, the spoiler free episodes, because there's going to be stuff we don't talk about in these episodes, including our Cauldron Save Us of the week. And we have like little segments, like film moment segments of things we'd love to adapt into a TV series or film from ACOTAR. So yeah, go check that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Go check that out. I feel like we dig it apart a lot more in those episodes, and this one is far more like, oh, with our ACOTAR knowledge, what were our responses to this chapter. And like Ariel said, it's like choose your own flavor, but I think you'll enjoy the non-spoiler section more than you expect, if you're one of those people who really likes taking apart language and imagery and all that kind of stuff. I think you'll enjoy it as well. But in case you did not listen to our non-spoiler section of this episode, so this week we did chapters 11 through 13, and just like a quick summary kind of each chapter in case you aren't reading along and you kind of just want to like get into the box of where we're at. Chapter 11 is where she thinks she sees her dad. It's not her dad, it's the puka. And she learns a little bit more about like Tamlin, and then also learns her vow has been fulfilled, that her family's taken care of to a degree. And then it ends with her nightmare about skinning a humanoid alive. And then chapter 12 is when she starts making a map. She sees Tamlin come back from killing the Bogge. She fixes his hand.
Got our first possible romantic moment.
Got our
Possible.
possible first romantic moment. And with it, we also we actually get like kind of a cute, flirty conversation between Tam and Feyre. And then 13 is when she's introduced to the study or the library. And it's when she sees the mural of the Cauldron for the first time, when she is really finally figuring out like she's in the spring court, and kind of really seeing the history of this world purely through the eyes of the Fae. She gets into a really dumb fight with Tamlin about reading and what have you, and then basically that chapter ends with her kind of sassily convincing Lucien to kind of tell her how she can catch the Suriel because she wants questions about what's going on.
Our
So
favorite
that's
queen.
our favorite queen, the Suriel. So that's kind of the overall the 3 chapters that we're working with right now. Um, but back to chapter 11, kind of
Yeah.
like the main like thing that kind of got me in the beginning is when she's like, "Oh, maybe maybe he got a ship and he's going to take us out
Yeah.
of here and like all this stuff." And it's so funny reading it cuz I just kind of want to be like, "Well, baby girl, he actually does get a ship.
You just gotta wait 2 books.
You just got to wait 2 books. One will be named after you."
Yeah, it'll be great, kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah,
except
because
he'll die
he's
after.
yeah, and, he's not actually showing up for you right now, but he
Yeah.
actually will show up later in the weirdest
Over the
way,
top.
most
Yeah.
performative way
Yep.
ever, but hey, it happens. But so, like, I don't know, her Sarah J. Maas giving us this little, like, "Maybe he got a ship and he's taking us away." I was like, "Oh, Sarah."
Well, and again, it's you have to wonder how much she was, like, Easter egging,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Was that set up ahead of time where she knew she was gonna do that? Or, like, did she think, like, later on as she was writing Akabor, like, "Oh, she mentions a ship in Thorns and Roses, he'll
Yeah.
bring some ships." I mean, that whole part of this chapter is so
Ugh,
sad. Like, we
it
talked
is.
about it a lot in the first half, but, like,
Yeah.
it's just I remember the first time reading it and being heartbroken when we realized it's not her dad, but the second time reading it, I think it's even more heartbreaking
Yeah.
because it's like, the second she sees him, that's not her dad, and it's
Yeah.
something and not only is it not her dad, it's something really fucking scary, right? So it's like the, like, worst case
Oh,
scenario.
yeah.
But yeah, the ship thing, I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
it was adding salt to that wound, you know?"
Totally. Well, and it's funny because, like, it also could not be an Easter egg at all because it could just be purely, like, if you were to just think about, like, how would these people escape? How would they blah, blah? They
Yeah.
would have to get a ship. They would have to get
Yeah.
off this island. So, like, there's that, but also just there's just, like, this extra kinda, like,
Yeah.
stab when, like, that he actually does,
Yeah.
he doesn't bring a ship to take you away. He brings a
Right.
ship full of warriors to help you, but it's yeah, it's funny because you're like, "Yeah, this, like, level of him showing up for you, yeah, baby girl, you're gonna have to wait a little while for this
He
to
needs some more
happen."
character development
He needs some
before we
more
get to
character
that.
exactly. It it's just kinda funny because I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever clocked that she, like, says the ship thing, and you're like, "Well, it happens, but not." Yeah,
I was
exactly.
gonna say, one thing I clocked that was interesting is during this moment when she is still thinking it's her dad, she says on page 96, "Then we'd flee Tamlin, flee the blight that could soon invade our lands." Which, like, the blight is one thing, obviously, like, that's scary, but she says first, over the blight, flee Tamlin.
Mhm.
I don't think there was ever a time in this book or in Akamath where she ever thinks of fleeing Reese.
Oh, yeah, she does.
Does she?
Yeah.
When?
When she has to first start going to visit him.
Oh, does she?
Yeah.
Well, then never mind.
Yeah, I get what you're going
Yeah.
with because it was funny re-listening to I don't know which episode it was, but it was an episode where you were kind of talking about, like, it's interesting how she's always has this feeling of wanting to flee Tamlin, but when she
Yeah.
first meets Reese, she's like, "He's the most beautiful man I've ever seen." So it is interesting. There is an instinctual thing that I think Sarah J. Maas is playing with there.
Yeah.
But yes, like when she's hiding behind Lucien when Reese first comes, she's very scared of
True.
him.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is taught to her. Like it is told
Yeah.
to her that he is bad.
I think I'm thinking more so like, and maybe I'm just misremembering when, like, in Akamath they have, she has
Yeah.
to fulfill the bargain where she
Yeah.
visits him once a week. I don't remember, and again, maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember her ever, like, trying to leave.
Trying to figure out how
Her
to escape.
Yeah.
There's something about where she is that makes it very obvious, like, there'd literally be no way to escape, which I think it still goes
Yeah.
it still like Moonstone Palace, from the way they describe it, is that it's like above the clouds. Like she's like,
Yes.
it's very obvious that there's like not really a place for her to go. So I don't
Fair.
know if there's that aspect. But you're right, she doesn't spend like a ton of time trying to figure out how to flee. And in fact, I mean, her first
Yeah.
time there, right? She's been rescued from her wedding, and she basically just like sleeps and rests and like
And
eats
throws a shoe at
and throws a
Reese.
shoe at Reese.
Yeah.
And Moore is just like a chaotic queen, loving her for it.
Yes.
Yeah, there, I mean, you make an interesting, I don't know how often she actually plans on trying to escape from those things. And so that is an interesting point. She is still very much afraid of
And
Tamlin. And I mean, you know, me playing the part that I always play.
I feel like we need a gavel for you
I know,
for your devil's
seriously.
advocate
Like,
moments.
well, like, hear ye, devil's advocate for rolling through. Like, by the time she meets Reese, she's already kind of in this fairy. She's been in
Yeah.
this fairy world a little bit longer. And by the
Yeah.
time she really has to deal with him a lot more, she's gone through so much shit.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like it's sometimes hard to compare, just because Tamlin
Yes.
is like her first real, and you know, when she first meets him, he's a fucking beast.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, she wants to flee Tamlin. I mean, I think if anything, it shows in this book at this certain point that like she is still very unclear and very afraid of him. And what's so funny is in the beginning, she says on the beginning of this chapter, but then like later on in these two chapters, like she clearly gets closer with him, which is maybe why that fight happens in 13, because maybe she's like, I was kind of starting to like you. And
Yeah.
then looking at this map makes me realize, fuck you, you're Faye.
Right.
And all you want to do is make fun of me that I can't read.
You're the oppressor. Yeah.
Exactly. But one thing I wanted to ask
Yes.
or bring up is like, also in chapter 11, Tamlin talks about how like he's really powerful, but like things are getting worse because of the blight,
Yeah.
and the borders are not being held. And reading that, I was like, oh, well, aren't the borders not being held because there's no one there to hold them?
Yeah.
Everyone's under the fucking mountain.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really excited actually to be doing this process with this book, because I
Yeah.
feel like there's so much about the under the mountain situation that I
Politics.
I have not absorbed,
Yeah.
because it feels like it's almost just like the court of each place is under the
Yeah.
mountain. Not all
Yes.
not all of the fae are down there,
I think that's
cuz
correct.
wowie.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, so like the people who would be protecting the borders, they're all under the mountain. So of course things are
Yes.
running amok. And don't we kind of learn that Amarantha is like sending shit?
Yeah, she definitely is, and I
Okay.
wonder if that moment when he says that to Feyre is, like, his way because, they can't tell her about
Right.
the curse, so if
Right.
it's, like, his little way like, they found loopholes to the curse where they can, like, hint at things, but they can't
Mhm.
outright say them, so I kinda got the sense that that was one of those moments of, like, "Yeah, the borders aren't holding
Yeah.
because of stuff." Wink,
Yeah.
wink, wink. Not that you'll
Everything's
ever decipher
different.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing so when she goes to Lucian, I think it's the next day, they're eating, I think either breakfast or dinner, I can't remember. And Tamlin gets up like right when Feyre gets there and just like stalks off. And Lucian tells
Mhm.
her, like, oh, he's gonna go hunt the bog. Page 101, he says, Tamlin gets into dot 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 moods. And my note was, you don't fucking say. But there's a TikTok I'm gonna send to you that I want to show you. We'll put it up on the screen. Just for the listeners who are not watching on YouTube, the person who posted that TikTok is at Emery's Book Talk on TikTok. So just want to give that person a shout out. But I had a moment of just like with Tamlin's moods, it just reminded me so much of this.
Feyre, princess. I see that you've had a little bit too much to drink on this beautiful cow and my. Let Daddy Tampon serenade you with my fiddle. Princess, would you like to hear me play a little song on my fiddle with my corded muscles? Oh, Princess Feyre, would you like to come back to my mansion? there's no need to be so upsetty spaghetti. You can stay in the mansion, paint Daddy Tampon. We can be okie dokie.
I don't know why, but when I read the Tamlin gets into his moods bit, I just now whenever he gets moody, I just picture him being like, Princess Feyre.
Yeah. You don't have to be so upsetty spaghetti.
Like that is the caricature version of Tamlin, obviously, but like it's kind of not that far off
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like, yeah, you get super moody and like blah blah blah. To me, I just feel like Tamlin is like this character that accepted that he needed to lead when he didn't want to.
Yeah.
But like he's doing it in a very begrudging manner, like
Yeah.
all the time. Like he's
Yeah.
never just kind of being like, well, it's pointless for me to brood about this.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do it and make the best of it. And like, yeah, there's a lot of things to argue for there from a devil's advocate standpoint of like, well, yeah, you know, he's under a curse. There's like a whole situation. And I mean, I think there's also the discussion of like Heart of Stone. Like, does that mean that he actually is devoid of certain emotions, which we know can't like be fully true because like I do believe that Tamlin
Right.
falls in love with Feyre. Like I do believe
yeah.
that he believes he is in love with her.
Yes.
So he can't be too devoid, but it is like has it numbed him to some degree? Like I don't know. I'm literally sitting here trying to think of like what the Tam girlies might say to us right now. But
I know.
it is just kind of like he never, you know, Buttercup never bucked up. You know what I mean?
No.
Like he never was just kind of like, okay, you know what? This like I just have to do this. Like he was always just kind of like a little emo brooding bitch
Little emo
about
boy.
this.
A little princess.
A little princess.
You know, I actually wrote in regards to this Tamlin mood bit, it made me realize, like, of course, kind of like this is why Feyre latches onto Tamlin and like Tamlin latches onto her, you know, kind of vice versa. Like, she's just had an identity crisis,
Yeah.
right? Where she's realized, like we talked about in the last episode, everything I've been working for in my life is now fulfilled, right?
Yeah.
Like this vow, this dream, it's all fulfilled. So of course she's gonna like latch on to the next thing that comes her way, who's gonna provide her some kind of a I guess like
Project.
yeah, yes. He's a project. And you know what? And I hate to say this, I think he sees her as a project.
Yeah, definitely in the beginning, just because he's working with this curse in mind. So
Yes.
like, yeah, she's a project, which I mean is what I think, you know, Lucien gets so pissed off about in chapter whichever one that was, 13 or 12. I don't
11.
remember when they get into the fight. When
Oh,
Lucien
yes.
and Tamlin get into the fight, and he's like, "You're not even trying." Like,
Yeah.
so like I think Tamlin kind of gives up on the project. And I think it turns into an entirely different project when he actually does kind of start caring about her. And I think his project is to keep her safe, keep her fed, keep her healthy.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes his like kind of like obsession.
Yeah.
It's not like Feyre really like had a choice in like where she was going, like in what her next project was. You know what I mean? Like she didn't really have like a lot of say in what's going on here. But yeah, I feel like Tamlin, it starts with like, maybe she can cure the curse. And then I think it turns into him being like, I just want to protect her so she doesn't have to do all these things. And I feel like it becomes, like an obsession.
Well, and I want to, when we get to chapter 12, I actually want to get more into that because I think I may have pinpointed at least what I think is the moment when he starts to think of Feyre as like an actual personal project. I think there's like Feyre as a project for the betterment of him and his court, right? And then Feyre as a personal project for him, right? Which we'll get to, but there's one last thing I want to talk about in chapter 11. And it's Feyre's dream. And specifically the part where she says, "Behind me, a shadow lurked." No.
Yeah.
Watch. It's Rhys!
Yeah. Okay. So I literally like wrote this down and I was like, wait, who's watching? Is this Rhys watching?
It's Rhys.
Like, because at first I was like, wait, is it the shadow of the wolf that she thinks is watching her? Like, is it, and then I was like, no, I feel like it's
Rhys.
Rhys.
Yeah.
Because we know that he kind of like has these like weird dreams with his mate.
Yep. Yep.
And you know, we know that's like the painting on the dresser and like all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I was like, is this Reese?
Yeah.
I feel like this is definitely Reese. I also think this moment is kind of interesting. Like I literally wrote like the nightmares begin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're with Feyre a lot during nightmares, and I was just like, ah,
Yeah.
yes, and so it starts.
You know what I just realized though?
What?
Oh, my heart. Reese comes to her in a nightmare almost as like, I think, a form of comfort.
I would
Like,
hope
even though
so.
I definitely don't think his intention is to like scare her more, but I think like even though she doesn't know, obviously he's there to comfort. I think the way and we'll find out once we get to Akamath, but I think that this is probably him trying to like maybe not comfort, because actually now that I think about it, I don't
Well,
think he
because
really knows what's going on fully.
no, because
Yeah.
he literally says like, oh, I got things in snippets. I got things when you were like really upset or like perturbed or whatever. And she even says like, let's see, behind me a shadow lurked, no, watched. I didn't dare turn to look at it to see who might be within that shadow, observing, not
Yeah.
as the wolf stared at me across the clearing. So yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah.
It's another person behind her, which I definitely think is Reese. I think it's exactly what she's saying of like it's this observation, like someone is
Yeah.
just watching. Because when Reese talks about it later, he is very like, I got stuff in snippets. I didn't really know who you were yet. I didn't really
Yeah.
know. But yeah, it is pretty fun because I don't think
Yeah.
I ever in any of my other reads ever clocked that, oh, wait, shit. Because you get so distracted by the rest of the dream that I think you
Yeah.
just like forget that she feels like she's being watched by somebody. So
Right. That means technically Calamai is not the first time we see Reese. It's here.
yeah, but we don't see anything,
Right. His
right?
presence. His
His
presence is
his
first.
presence is there.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, no, I thought that was like a very fun little moment of like, oh shit. Well, and also just like, I mean, you know, we talked about it a long time ago, but even it's still so wild to read about the night sky being painted on her. Like,
No.
like that still gets me every single time because you're just like, wow, Reese has been there from the beginning. He has been
Yeah.
a part of this from the very beginning. But yeah,
Oh,
I'm really
it's
glad
so
you
good.
pointed that out because that was going to be my thing of like, wait, pretty sure Shadow Daddy is in.
Look, in the book that is the most devoid of Reese, I yeah, probably I would say has the least amount of Reese in it compared to
Yes.
all the others. I will take any
Oh, I know.
bit of Reese I can
I
get.
know.
Any shred of him.
I
Speaking
know.
of shreds,
Seriously.
actually, I have okay, so chapter 12. I have a question. Tamlin comes home
Right.
after killing the bog.
Yep.
He goes from his wolf form, which is dripping blood, right, to his fey form. And on page 104, it says his clothes were in shreds, long, vicious shreds that made me wonder how he wasn't gutted and dead. Okay, I have a
Hot.
question. Hot, yes. But I think we might need to do some fey physics / maybe math here. So
Okay.
walk with me. I have some questions for
All right.
Miss Math.
I'm walking.
So he was presumably in beast form when he killed the bog because he comes home in beast form, covered in
Yeah.
blood, right?
Yeah.
He's also a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
He also can glamour. So my question is, why are his clothes shredded when he morphs back into a fae? Like,
Okay, come on. Give the
look,
guy a fucking break, dude. He just killed the bog. Like,
I know, but like,
you really think cuz also he doesn't think anyone's going to be awake. He's not like he's not like coming back being like, "Oh, I have to make sure that like I'm put together when I change back into human
oh,
form." Oh, you
sure,
mean
but
like when he cuz you're right. He clocks her in his beast form.
well,
So when he
yes,
comes back, when he switches, why doesn't he just put like normal clothing on himself? Is that what you're saying?
that, and also just why, if his beast form isn't wearing clothes, why then would his clothes be shredded to begin with? You know what I mean?
Oh.
Like, why wouldn't they just be whole? Or why wouldn't he be naked if we're going that route? Like,
Oh.
you know?
Now that
Yeah.
this feels a lot like the like sort of werewolf question
Yep.
or like the Hulk or
Yes.
you know like with all these like beings who like shift and stuff there's always a discussion of the clothing. You're like what happens?
Yeah.
That's a really 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 interesting question. Yeah, why would they be shredded if he was in
Right.
beast form?
I can tell you what I think, at least why when he morphs back into his Fey self and they are shredded, I think he's one, a drama queen, and two, he's low key showing off. Like he knows he's hot. He knows, like, oh, even though I don't think he'll admit to himself yet that he has a thing for Feyre, I think he's stunting. He's stunting, which is like kind of adorable
Oh my
in a
god.
dark way.
Wait, I think I may have already asked you this question. Have you seen Howl's Moving Castle?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay. So, when he there's the wrong hair dye
Oh yeah, it's
and
been a while, but yeah,
well, there's he accidentally dyes his hair red because Sophie has cleaned the whole bathroom and everything. And he
right.
literally has a dark wizard meltdown because he dyes his hair the wrong color. And
Yeah,
you're just like, homie, literally he falls apart. He
yeah,
almost destroys the entire castle
yeah.
because because he's ugly, which it's a commentary on the character, obviously.
Right.
But you saying that just makes me think of that moment. It feels like a Howl
Yeah.
move. It seems like
Yeah.
something Howl would do because Howl is a dramatic queen, 100%.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's really funny to think about that he's just like, I need her to know how much I went through to kill this bog.
But Daddy Tempa needs her to know.
Daddy Tempa needs Princess Feyre to know.
I can't.
Sorry, I just really love this idea of Tamlin just
Like being outside the house, being okay.
yeah.
Just-
All right, and I'm gonna change into my beast form real quick and
Do my
you know what?
costume change?
Yeah, exactly. Costume change. I'm gonna prick myself a little bit so there's a little bit of blood when I paw in, and then I'm gonna oh god,
Oh, he gussies himself up,
he
but in
gussies
like,
himself up, sweet baby boy, God in heaven. Well, okay, let me see if I could try to come up with a reasonable. I feel like what it could be is maybe he started off in human form.
okay,
Okay.
yes, that's
And he
fair.
started because I feel like the one thing that we have learned about beast form is I do feel like he doesn't really it comes out slowly. I feel like
Yeah.
he really tries to push the full transformation to very specific times.
At least in this point in time.
At least
Later on.
yeah. I feel like maybe we're just supposed to assume that he started off in his male form.
That's fair.
And
Yeah.
then
Beast.
once it started getting a little out of hand,
A little too big for his britches.
or just it got, maybe once the demon clawed at him, he was like, okay, shit, I'm gonna change
Yeah.
into my beast form.
Yeah.
I think that could be the only explanation I could think of, or he's
Yeah.
a dramatic.
I think you are probably if we're talking canonically, I think you're probably right, but my headcanon is
I
he's
was
just a
gonna say,
dramatic queen who
I
wants to
was,
show off.
I was literally just about to say, I'm pretty sure at this point it doesn't matter what I say. I think you're just gonna be like, no, he was like, I'm gonna shred up my clothes so she can see some of my muscles, but also so she knows that I fought really hard.
It's very much, and I think it goes back to what we said in the first in the spoiler-free episode, is it feels very high school, this
Oh, yeah.
relationship.
Well, I mean, I feel like this whole book,
Yeah.
because just this whole book is very stereotypical fairy tale, Beauty and the Beast.
Yep.
And so I think that's why, I mean, it's what we've talked about already before of I think that's why you end up excusing a lot of Tamlin's behavior, because you're reading it with a sort of juvenile headspace.
Yeah.
And the only time it really starts veering away from that in my mind is once she hits Under the Mountain. That's when I feel like it starts growing up a little bit.
The other thing I want to talk about is I feel the moment when Tamlin starts making her his personal project is when she bandages his hand and he starts learning more when he learns that she can't write. What I find so interesting about the hand fixing scene is they're both starting to get to know each other on a much more personal level than before.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both asking some pretty personal questions of one
Yeah.
another, but they're also kind of they're answering them to a degree, but then asking the other one a question to dodge
Yeah.
getting like deeply personal into it. I also think like the writing bit when he's like, "You can't write, can you?" And then he like later kind of helps her learn to read
Mm-hmm.
and write. I just wrote Mr. Savior complex over
Yeah.
here, right? Like he is again, he's making her his project, right?
Yeah. I just feel like Tamlin is just such he is such a creature from his situation, and like,
Yeah.
and I mean in the sense of Feyre is something he can fix.
Yes.
It's a attainable, this curse and everything
Yep.
feels very unattainable.
Yes.
And I feel like he just gets really wrapped up in like, I can do this.
Yeah.
This I can actually accomplish.
Yes.
Which you're just like, oh, sweet, sweet baby boy. You have been so hurt. My God. Like,
And
what
also
a
that's a
shitty
harder
situation. Yes.
yeah, that's a harder you can't really fix a person, right?
No.
Like
Well,
people can only fix themselves,
well, and
really.
also, if you're already looking at someone as someone who needs to be fixed,
Mhm.
that's a big, big, big red flag to me.
Big red flag.
Because I don't think we should view the ones we love as people who need to be fixed.
Right.
I think you view the ones you love as people who need to be cared for.
Yes.
Like, that's
Yes.
different. Cared for and protected. And like,
Yep.
fixed is a very problematic word because of what you just said.
Mhm.
No one gets fixed. Like,
Right.
I'm a hell of a lot better than I was 5 years ago. I'm not
Yeah.
fixed.
Right.
Like, in fact, if I was fixed, like, hopefully that happens towards the end of my life. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like
Right.
we're
Yes.
always striving to be better and to
Yep.
be more and to be whatever. And so like,
Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, I think it's like very problematic to be viewing anyone as something to be fixed. And so
Yeah.
like, I very much believe that I think that is one of the biggest issues with Tamlin and Feyre, is that I
Yep.
feel like Tamlin looks at her and like, maybe not she needs to be fixed, but he can like fix her life.
Yes.
Is more what it feels like.
Yes.
Because I don't feel like he knows her well. It almost just feels like he's like, I can fix things for you to make
Yeah.
it better because you've
Yes.
had a rough go.
Well, I
Yeah.
do wonder though, because like when she starts confiding in him about like her family situation, like I mean, even him just saying like, "Has anyone ever taken care of you?"
Yeah.
I think I kind of do think he thinks on an emotional level she needs to be fixed a little bit,
Yeah.
and I wonder, and this just dawned on me, he's not able to. Well, he does have the ability to fix a curse. He's just not doing it, right? And what I mean by that is, there's an easier way to stop the curse, which is to marry Amarantha,
Yeah.
right? The curse is brought on because of him, which is like, and I say that with some hesitancy because like I don't want to victim blame Tamlin. Like the curse is brought on because
It's
Amarantha's a total
Amarantha.
bitch.
Yeah.
Yes, but he's taking the harder route to end the curse, which is get this human woman to kill a fae and then fall in love with him, right? Like
Yeah.
that is so much like the steps of there's so many more steps to that than there is to just marry Amarantha, like we talked about, I think, in our last episode. And this is not to say Tamlin should marry Amarantha. I'm not arguing that. But
Yeah, because we also talked about the potentialness, like the potential problematicness of like
yes.
of them getting married and like what could happen to the world and blah 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 blah. But yeah.
Right. But I do wonder if the reason I'm bringing this up is like I wonder if there's this level of guilt he feels knowing like I could end this all by just marrying her, right? Or even like think about it, like they're T minus a few weeks, maybe months,
Yeah, I think it's
maybe
got
a
to be a
couple
few
months.
months.
Yeah, from the
Yeah.
curse ending, and he's gonna have to marry her regardless. So what were the last 49 years of all the other courts being tortured under this mountain for, right?
Yeah.
Like it was for nothing. And
Yeah.
so I wonder if there's this level of guilt and like he feels like it's out of his control but also within his control sort of kind of simultaneously. So instead of doing that, he's like, let me go fix this other thing, this human instead, right?
Yeah.
I can control that, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's kind of like his like inner dialogue in a
Yeah.
way. And, like,
Like,
not in a conscious
likely.
way, but, like, in a very subconscious, like,
Oh, yeah.
he's not even thinking about it type of
Oh,
way.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the stuff that Tamlin does is not it's not at the surface thoughts. It's
No.
like stuff that's been ingrained into him. And I feel like that's why there's a level of like weird like pity and kind of like understanding that I feel
Yeah.
like that you and I have about Tamlin is that it's
Yeah.
just like he is such a product of his situation
And his
and
family,
it's
because I
that's what
think
I mean, like, is, like,
yeah.
his nurture or
Yeah.
lack thereof, like, he is
Yeah.
such a product of all of that shit, and you're just like, oh, it's just it's so hard to watch, and it's really interesting doing another reread like this of Tam because I think I've already said this many times, though, but it's just, like, doing it again, like, I forgot that he didn't wanna be a leader.
Same.
I
I
completely forgot
always
about
forget
that.
that.
And, like, that little moment where I was like, "Fuck, this guy just got thrown into it because of the awful decisions of his dad." Like, it's so and that's, like, almost doing this reread and having some of these moments, I, like, really hope Tamlin does get a redemption.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm sure I'll be singing a different tune once we get to Mist and Fury because he's just a total he's a
Well,
total ass in Mist and Fury.
you know what who he reminds me, and I'm not gonna, like, go into it too much in case we have listeners who haven't read the series. He reminds me so much of Jane Ados in, the Imperium
Yes.
series, of, like,
Yes.
he just follows the rules and
Yes.
doesn't really question them until
It's
he
too
is
late.
forced to until it's too late, and then he's kind of forced to, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to, like, following his father's legacy.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just yeah. Oh, that's a really good comparison, I
And they're
feel.
both blonde. I guess blonde there's a thing about blonde men in
I mean,
fantasy.
well, I mean, I actually feel like that's an overall commentary on the world is like
Yeah.
I think it's just an interesting commentary of like normally in these back in the day in these romance books, those were the dreamy and like the darker ones were not. And so I think
Yes.
that's a little bit of Sarah J. Maas being like,
Yeah.
you know,
I do wanna talk about the argument scene.
oh yeah,
So
this is so big. That was
so
so
telling.
hard in the spoiler-free portion when I was
Oh
like,
god.
"What is Lucien even talking about? This is
Have
so
no idea.
crazy. I have no idea." But, like, you have to like, I had to talk about it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, if you guys don't listen to the first one, it's really funny because Ariel literally is just like, "I really have nothing to say here. I'm kind of gonna save it for the spoiler section." And I was like, "Okay." And, like, in my head, I was like, "We still have to talk
I
about it." Like,
know.
and so Ariel just sits quietly while I'm like, "They have this argument and what is Lucien even talking about?" Because, I'm trying to come at it from a place of like someone who hasn't read it because it is
Right.
if you have not read this section is like wildly
Insane.
confusing that you're
Yeah.
just kind of like, okay, something's wrong. He's clearly supposed to be doing something. And if you're already reading the book with like the Beauty and the Beast headspace, then you're like, okay, clearly he probably has to get Feyre to fall in love with him or some shit. I have no idea. And yeah, he's not trying like this hardcore feels like Lumiere
Yeah.
and Cogsworth chilling with the Beast, or even, Miss Teapot being like,
Yeah.
bro, what are you
Well,
doing?
and
You gotta try.
it's funny, like, to just defend myself a little bit from the last episode. One thing you need to know, listeners, is Corryn and I have a history of I am really bad about spoilers. I'm gonna call myself out on this.
She is the worst. She's the worst. The only, like, I would actually say probably the only somewhat legit fight we've ever gotten into is, is literally me just being like, I need you to shut the fuck up about the articles you're reading about Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I get so excited and it's like
she gets so excited. It's so pure. It's so cute. I mean, like, it's hard to get fully mad at her. She'll go, no, I won't spoil anything. I won't spoil anything. And you're like,
which is not my water.
bitch, yes, you are. Like,
You just spoiled the whole film.
like literally, like every time when we're recording this, Ariel goes, it won't spoil anything. I'm sitting here just like,
I know, I
please
can,
don't actually like I'm
I see
like
your face every
I know,
time.
because she because sometimes I don't know if Ariel actually understands what spoiling means sometimes. Like every now and then,
I
I'm like,
I
you've
think I've
gone
gotten
one step
better.
too far. She's gotten better. She's gotten better. Even now on like our TikToks that we do, I'm like half the time texting Ariel being like, is this like the one you did with Nyx? I was like, oh my, this is so good, but oh my God, this is a huge spoiler. If anyone accidentally comes across this, like they're just going to be like, wait, what? Should we be
TikTok is
worried?
different.
Because we are,
TikTok is
yeah,
different.
Ariel goes, TikTok is the Wild West.
It is. No, and here's why. It's hard to like fast forward through something in a podcast, right? Especially if you're like me. Like I listen to like podcasts when I'm like in the shower and shit,
Mhm.
right? Like my phone isn't by me. With a TikTok, if you're like, oh, I sense a spoiler, you can just not watch that TikTok. You know what I mean? In my defense, I can play devil's advocate for myself. This is also coming from the woman who would send me so many Akatar reels, and they weren't spoiler reels, but because she would send me Akatar reels as I was reading Akatar, I would like the. I don't know what is wrong with the Instagram algorithm, but it knows whatever the next chapter you're gonna get in a book, and it just spoils it for you. So, Wild West, Wild
Yeah,
West.
it is. But yeah.
God. Okay, we should really
Oh my
get
God.
back on
Wow.
track.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, so this argument, right?
Yeah.
Like that Lucian speaking of arguments, this argument that Lucian and Tamlin have. First off, we get our first ever Heart of Stone
Heart of
moment.
Stone.
He literally says, for someone with a heart of stone, yours is certainly soft these days. It just like the immediate thing that popped into my mind, if you for those of you who have watched Arrested Development, it's literally there's always money in the banana stand. Like, I don't know how much more clear to make it. There's literally always more money in the banana stand. Tamlin, you literally have a heart of stone.
You
Which,
literally have a Heart of Stone.
you know what's so funny is like, I guess I just forgot because like I remember when I read Akatar for the first time, I listened to the last like hour and a half of the book, I want to say, right before you and I were planning to have like a catch up.
Mm.
And so I like sped through that whole part, like the part where we find out his like heart is literally stone.
Yeah.
So I think for the longest time, I just kind of forgot, like, no, it is literally stone.
Yeah. That's why, like, she kills him.
Yeah.
That's like the whole test. That's like what
Yes.
Amarantha is basically like thinking she's tricking Feyre
Right.
because she thinks Feyre is not going to do it. But then Feyre realizes, yeah. But yeah, actual Heart of
It's
Stone.
so funny. And so, like, I just had no idea how early.
I know.
Okay, actually, this brings up another. This might be a nitpicky thing for me, but I think this is a more legitimate question than the shredded clothes one. So the curse dictates that they're not allowed to tell anyone about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how is Lucien able to say that?
It almost feels like if you already know about the curse, you can talk about it with each other.
Okay, yes. That's what I was wondering. But then and this is maybe this is just a loophole because that's what I kind of came to the conclusion of. But what happens in the case of here where someone could eavesdrop who doesn't know
Yeah.
about the curse? You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a hole in some, and I'm not sure if it's a hole in our understanding or
Right.
if it's a hole in
Like the
like
curse itself.
the actual curse like itself.
I think it's
Or-
that.
Yeah, I think because you make a good point of like what stops them just talking about it, and then or maybe that's what it is that it's like it has to stay very vague. Yeah, because in a way they are talking pretty intensely about it. Like he's like, you're not
Yeah.
even trying. Everything's getting worse.
Yep.
Like, what the fuck? Like,
Right.
get to it, bro. You know?
Yeah.
So in a way he is actually talking about it, but I wonder if like the curse, like if they had attempted to go into more intense detail, like maybe the curse would have stopped them.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like I wonder if it's a thing where like
It is a little shaky.
yeah, I am inclined to think it's like you said, like a hole, like a little loophole in the curse where it's like, because like my first thought was like, okay, well, like if they can talk about it to other people who know about the curse, why wouldn't they just like conveniently talk about it around Feyre, knowing she's gonna eavesdrop? But maybe the curse
Yeah.
somehow knows if they're conscious of that. Like I don't know.
Maybe.
But that was something interesting.
Well, and
Mhm.
this is like right before this, but like she wants to observe the art because she thinks it's empty. She thinks there's
Oh,
no
yeah.
one there. and and also when she ends up talking with Tamlin later, and she's asking all these really like intricate or like detailed questions about
Yeah.
like what's happening with the blight and how like in the writing Sarah J Maas even says like, you know, he's like scanning the hallways because he like is like nervous about what he's answering. And I just love this thought of that, like they're actually surrounded by a bunch of servants and she's just like blatantly asking
Yeah.
these like really intense bold questions, and all these people are sort of probably looking at her like, what the fuck is this bitch doing? And she's just like, la la la, we're by ourselves, I can ask all these questions.
Well, there's
Sorry,
like the joke
any of the
of
empty
like,
house stuff is like my favorite.
so there's like this like running joke I feel on Akatar internet where it's like she's just like taking a shit in her bathroom.
Yeah.
There's like a fairy like right
Fairy.
outside, like carrying her, just like blast that toilet away.
Yeah.
Like, so good.
Ugh, I just it also just gets more and more embarrassing for Feyre, like the more you think about it, and you're just like, oh my god, like I can't wait till the glamour gets taken off and she like
I
finally sees
know.
everybody and she sees how Alice actually looks. But anywho, okay, so the fight and this whole thing of Tamlin being like I can't stomach it for what my father did to like her kind. I don't know how to take that.
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, his dad was like pro slavery,
Yes.
right?
What does he mean that he can't stomach it? Because he feels like he's doing something bad to Feyre, and like he feels guilty for what his dad did to her people.
He is, I wouldn't go as far to say as he's enslaving her, but like he's not really giving her many choices,
Yeah,
right?
like
So
that's true. Like he's not. Yeah, he's not giving her a freedom of choice. That's for
exactly.
sure.
I feel like yeah, he's definitely saying like I can't stomach that my dad was basically a slave owner, right?
Right.
And then like he probably is having some feelings about like how this whole scenario with what he has to do is kind of a, I'm not going to say mirroring of what his dad did because it's very different, but like it's still bringing up some icky feelings,
Well, because he
right?
says, yeah, like I won't follow in his footsteps, won't be that
Yeah.
sort of person. And so but in my mind, I'm like, you're just trying to get her to fall in love with you. How is that anything like enslavement?
Well, I'm wondering if this then is like because Amarantha's back on Hybern's behest, right? Although she's kind of gone rogue,
Yeah.
but he wants to bring slavery back, right?
Right.
And I think Amarantha does too, right? Like
Right.
she looks down the humans, so it's like he knows what's at stake. But then this comes back to, and actually this is part of the argument I want to bring up where Tamlin says, "What I've got to lose, what's lost already" on page 108, and it's like it brings it back to this very like selfish place, I think, of like he's kind of just thinking for himself, right? Because I'm like, what do you mean? What have you lost? Like, what's lost already? Like, you lost your fucking friends. Like, so many of your friends have gone out and died,
Yeah.
right? Like, to end this curse up, we talked about, I think it was last episode or a couple episodes ago, like, the only person really benefiting from getting out of this curse is Tamlin, right?
Yeah.
Like, because then he doesn't have to marry Amarantha. But that doesn't stop Amarantha. It just stops her from having to marry, from
Right.
forcing him to marry her.
Right.
And the masks can come off. But like Amarantha's still gonna try and rule. She's still probably gonna like help out Hybern with his like slavery agenda. Because
Mhm.
that's what the war comes down to.
Yeah.
He's trying to get rid of that wall so he can enslave humans again. So I think Tamlin's having feelings about like what his part in all of this is,
Yeah.
and I don't think he's able to like fully articulate it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, and this is why again, like if he gets a redemption story, it's going to have to be a hell of a redemption. Like
Yeah.
he's still being really selfish,
Yeah.
right? Like he's only thinking about how do I get out of this? How do my people get out of this? And it's why he gets himself into what he gets himself into.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny too, actually, because Feyre is the kind of one, she's sort of the one who actually starts making all of these High Lords think about anyone besides their courts.
Yep.
Rhys is only focused on the Night Court.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is only focused on their courts.
Yep.
And yeah, she's the first one to be like, no.
Yeah.
This is going to affect all of us, so we're all in this together.
Yep.
Team.
We're all in this
Yes. Together. Once we know that we are, we're all stars, and we'll see that. Little High School Musical.
I was saying the millennials in us just came out
know.
hardcore right then.
I love it, and I'm proud of it. But yeah, Feyre is the first one to make any of these High Lords think about anything besides their courts.
Yeah. It's so funny because one of the last quote I wrote down for this chapter was
Yeah.
she says, well, I didn't want to be caught up in some brutal war or revolution. I doubted I'd survive very long. And I'm like, girl, you're going to be
Yeah.
leading the revolution. Like,
I actually think I highlighted that too, because I was just like, this is so funny. Like,
Yeah.
oh, girl, you're about to be in the fucking middle of this shit. Like, not only are you going to get caught up, you're going to like be the problem and the solution, like at a certain
Truly.
point. Like,
Truly.
watch out, because it's all on you.
You are literally the main character.
Yeah, but I do think like a lot of this fight is interesting too, because it really makes me love Lucien even more, because it's
Yeah.
Lucien is literally saying, buck up, Buttercup, and just fucking do your job. Like, he's like,
Yep.
you're glowering, you're like, you're barely around, like you're sulking. And he's like, we don't have the time for you to be doing this. And that's even why Tamlin is like, you think I don't know what's going on? And Lucian's like, it doesn't seem like it, homie, because you're not doing anything to solve this. So like, a lot of this reread makes me just like, my heart for Lucien just really, oh my God.
I was gonna say, like,
it's so rough.
I've never been like what I would say like, or what I would call Lucien girly in terms of like I've always liked Lucien, but I'm not like, oh, daddy Lucien, you know? I'm starting to like get it more now.
Yeah.
Cause he's the type of person you want when shit hits the ceiling, right?
Yeah.
Like he's the guy who'll stop you and be like, just think of The Incredibles when Edna Mode's like, pull yourself together.
Exactly.
Like that's Lucien. And I'm like, it's kind of hot. Kind of hot.
Yeah. Well, it's also why it makes the whole portion of her kind of being like a spy at the spring court. It also why it makes all of that extra complicated, because if Lucien wasn't there, that whole section would just be like, yeah, fuck this guy, get it, girl. But like, Sarah J. Maas had to add in that gray area where you're like, well, fuck, like Lucien, and the fact that she uses Lucien for Tamlin to get Tamlin to finally do like the big blow up, right? Like she stages this whole thing that makes it look like her and Lucien were like having sex or something like that.
Yeah.
And so she uses him for the final escape, pretty much.
Yep. The great escape.
Yeah, and it's rough because it makes Lucien just becomes like just like a heartbreaking character the more you think about him, because also that's also what makes it so heartbreaking when he isn't really standing up for Feyre when Tamlin's doing all this shit for her.
Yep.
Like, he fights for her like a little bit, but like not fully. And that's what Feyre even kind of like comes at Lucien a little bit when she's like finally leaving to go back to Rhys. And he's just like, what the fuck? And she's like, what the fuck? Like, you saw, why didn't you say anything of what was going on, or like blah blah. There's so many more things that you like love about him, and that's what makes some of his actions later like even that much more heartbreaking.
I know. I did want to get to chapter 13.
Yeah.
I didn't clock this the first read. I think because I didn't really clock that this was a retelling of Beauty and the Beast until I think after we found out about the curse. That's when I first realized, oh, this is Beauty and the Beast.
What? This library moment didn't make you think Beauty and the Beast?
No,
dude.
And it's just so funny now because I'm like, when Belle is introduced to the Beast Library, it's just like magical moment of like, my books. And here Feyre's like, I gotta do this. Like,
fuck.
But one hint, like one big hint, I think, especially aside from obviously it being a library, is she talks about the smell of roses outside. And the whole enchanted rose and Beauty and the Beast. So I thought that was cute.
It actually is one of like our only times
getting
roses discussed in a book called A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Well, aside from the main one of like, I love you, Thorns.
Oh yeah, that I love Sarah J. Maas, but like that line, I probably will forever be so confused by.
I think I liked it the first time, but now it makes me want to puke. Honestly.
Well, I mean, of course it does now, but I think even the first time I was like, Thorns and all what? Like
How is she thorny?
where did Thorns come from? Like,
Yeah.
how did we get there's been no mention of this,
No.
of Thorns or anything thus far, or someone being like having a thorny personality. Like there's been nothing, and like
Nothing.
yeah.
Now, okay, on page 117, she's looking at the mural, right? And she sees like the night court and everything. And she says, at least I'd learned the layout of their lands, and I knew to never, ever go north. And I literally wrote in my book, I will show it to you.
Yeah, right, queen.
LOL.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. You keep thinking that.
Yeah, it's so good. I love that.
Yeah,
It's
like,
oh,
oh.
baby girl.
You have no idea.
Not only are you gonna go, but it's like it's gonna be your home. Like, just you wait. Like, at first, for some reason, when they were talking about the mountain that's described on the map.
Did you
I don't
think it
know
was
why-
Ramiel too?
Yeah, my brain
Yep,
immediately went
yep.
to Ramiel, and I was like, actually, no.
Yeah, I know. I forgot about the mountain here. I'm like, right, there's the mountain.
I know,
No, my brain went there first too.
That's what's so funny is like, is it Ramiel? Is that how they pronounce it in the audiobooks?
In the audiobooks, it's pronounced Ramiel. Yeah.
Ramiel. Okay. Ramiel, like, it becomes such an important mountain that I like
Huge.
literally forgot that this like whole book is about a mountain. And like I was like, Ramiel's supposed to be like snow all the way to the top, and like it's not in the center, it's like in the north. Like I was like, this is so, what is happening?
I was gonna say, in my head when I read that, I literally thought like, oh, I thought Ramiel was north, not south of the night court. And then I was like, right, there's the other mountain.
Yeah, there's
the one.
the mountain.
Yeah.
I literally had to go look at the map in this book.
I think I did that too.
Because then it says like under the mountain, and I was like, oh, the mountain.
Right,
Yes.
right. Yes.
I totally forgot about that. But yeah, it's so funny her like, yeah, reading about, or like the night court, and like how even in like the depiction of the night court, it sounds really scary. Like there's like little eyes you can see in between like the shadows and like all this stuff. And I was like, oh yes, the lore of the night court. Just you wait, sweet angel, sweet summer child.
Okay, one thing I want to bring up post argument. So Feyre says she's like thinking about the night before when like she bandaged Tamlin's hand. And she says, yeah, it was one thing to bandage his hand, to talk to him as if he wasn't a predator built to kill and destroy, but to reveal how little I truly knew, to let him see that part of me that was still a child, unfinished and raw. And what that really just like, it really hones in this point for me that Feyre is still a child in many ways, kind of like we talked about in the spoiler-free episode.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, I will reference my queen, Taylor Swift. It reminds me of her song Dear John, where she says, don't you think 19's too young to be messed with? And I think, again, this is why, as much as I can now like have more empathy for Tamlin, it's still really hard to forgive him of like, she is 19, you're like 500 and something.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like you really should, in Taylor's words, you should have known. Like, you should know better than this. She is raw and unfinished, as she says.
Yeah.
And that just made me really sad.
Yeah. Her whole headspace after the argument that she has with Tamlin is like really rough, because it is very much this extremely insecure young girl who she's very aware of all of her quote unquote failings. It almost feels like she thinks she's like disappointing Tamlin in the kind of person that she is.
Yeah.
And the fact that she can't read, that she can't do some of these things, like it's just it's just bizarre, because like why would she care, first of all, if she was quote unquote disappointing Tamlin? But I think it just goes into this space, because like it really affects her that he says you're not the kind of human I had in mind.
Yes.
And it like really fucks with her. And it's interesting, because I think it all comes back to just that she basically says illiterate, ignorant, unremarkable proud, cold. Like, it reminds me of when, because I am a very defensive person and I have to work a lot on not being so defensive. And so when you hear someone say something that sounds like it could be a critique,
Mm.
you're going to take it as a critique.
Yeah.
And you're then going to fill in the space, you're going to fill in the gaps.
That they didn't say.
Exactly. And so in your mind, they did say all of that.
Yeah.
In reality, they never did. And most
No.
of the time what happens between my partner and I is when I tell him how I heard something, he'll be like, "What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I'm what? I literally was just saying how interesting." Like, like it was opposite. Like he actually was
Right.
like being supportive of something I was saying, but I was like, "No,
Yeah.
you made it sound like I was being silly or blah 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 blah." Like, so I just feel like she's like so intensely in that space because it's really not like, what does it matter to her? Why does she care that she's insignificant to these people? Like, I don't know.
Well,
It's like, it's kind of fascinating.
I mean, and this is actually my last quote I had. She like fucking spirals. So like
Yeah.
on 119, she said, "I'd been equally foolish for feeling a shred of pity for him, for the lone brooding fairy, for someone I had so stupidly thought would really care if he met someone who perhaps felt the same, perhaps understood, in my ignorant, insignificant human way, what it was like to bear the weight of caring for others. I should have let his hand bleed that night. Should have known better than to think that maybe there would be someone, human or fairy or whatever, who could understand what my life, what I had become these past few years." This really gets down to the heartbreak of
Mm.
Tamlin and Feyre, right? And I think
Mhm.
it's, I would say just for Tamlin, in terms of like the heartbreak, both I think Feyre experiences with him as well as the fandom experiences with him,
Mm.
is like Feyre and the fandom. I'm speaking generally here. I know some people clocked Tamlin's red flags, before any of the rest of us did.
Mhm.
But for those of us who didn't, right? We all thought he got it
Yeah.
later on in the book. We all thought he understood. This is a moment where, like, even though, I agree with what you just said of like, she's kind of filling in these gaps. And I think in this moment she is, right? Because I don't think he meant any harm by what he
No,
said.
I don't think he did either.
But what she, I think, is right about is he does view her as, like we were saying earlier, as broken,
Yeah.
right? And that's the heartbreak of it, is like he's not viewing her as an equal partner like Reese does.
Yeah.
He doesn't think she has the potential to be a high lady, right?
Yeah.
He's viewing her as something he can fix and he could keep in a gilded cage for the rest
Yeah.
of their lives, right? And I think this is why Reese ends up being her mate, is both Reese and Feyre are outsiders, right?
Yeah.
Reese is obviously an outsider to pretty much everyone outside of Valeris, which is the vast majority of the world.
Mhm.
And then Feyre is an outsider even in her own fucking family,
Yeah.
right? And she kind of further becomes an outsider even when she becomes Fae. Like, she is this made thing. Like, no one can know the experience of that, at least until her sisters get made as well. But even them, like, they
Even
don't
then,
have,
that's
they don't have all the powers of the High Lords like she
yeah.
does.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where Feyre and Reese, like, it's what makes them work, is they're both these outsiders within their own worlds, and they
Yeah.
understand each other
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, I also think that Tamlin's protectiveness was made much worse by what happens under the mountain.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I definitely think that is the biggest reason as to why he gets like so obsessive about her staying at home, because I think of the events that happen under there. Yeah, that quote you just said, like, yeah, like she is spiraling so hard.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, I wish I didn't clean his hand. It's like, whoa, girl.
Yeah.
Like,
Which means he would die.
exactly. And it's just like, because okay, I realize now, like, Tamlin does, after he says the human comment, he does actually say like, I'm sorry, because he realizes he's being like a little harsh. But like
Yeah.
the level in which she like like, that's why, again, in my notes I wrote like, I don't really understand how this fight becomes so intense and big.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the things we talked about just now and in the non-spoiler episode of just like, it just feels like two people arguing about completely different things, and there's a body there and they're just gonna yell at each other. Like, I feel like she's insecure, he's annoyed that she's insecure.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and maybe this is just like my own projections, but like I'm thinking back to my own Tamlin Feyre relationship.
yeah.
And early on, there were things that this person and I would not even argue about, but things I clocked pretty early on, like in a
Mhm.
similar way that Feyre did. And then in hindsight, which we know is 2020, I'm like, oh, I think I actually picked up on some stuff that I couldn't understand until I later found out
Yeah.
more information. And I kind
Yeah.
of wonder if that's what she's going through here, right? Of
Mhm.
like she's reacting and maybe doesn't even understand fully why she's reacting in this way. And there's that saying of like, believe people when they reveal who they are at the
Yeah.
beginning, you know?
Yeah.
And I think Tamlin does do that. He does reveal who he is the moment we first meet him.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me save you, but you have to live on my lands for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I'm gonna save you under very conditional terms,
And they're very
right?
conditional terms. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is Tamlin in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
also, let me save you, not for you, but for me,
yeah.
you
Well,
know?
and honestly, actually, the more I think about it, this argument is like very foreshadowing too, because he literally is confused as to why she wouldn't take his help. Remember, he even says, like, you don't think I have better
Yeah.
things to do than to think of like ways to humiliate you. But yet he doesn't have time. He does have time to help her learn how to read.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm dedicating my time. And like, why, like, you don't trust me? You don't blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, bro, like that, this whole argument actually, I realize now is like very foreshadowing of like him being like, what do you mean you don't want to stay in the protection of my home?
Right.
What do you mean? Like, he just does not understand.
Now there's one thing, I have a question for you about
Okay.
the end of the chapter.
Okay.
And maybe it's explained later and I just don't remember. But why do you think Lucian tells
Mm,
Feyre how to trap the Suriel? Because like in my mind, he kind of is starting to like her,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So why would he want her dead?
Mm.
Especially if she's gonna help fix this curse. And the Suriel is most likely gonna kill her. Like, why would he not discourage her from doing it at all?
I don't think he thinks. First of all, I don't think he thinks that Fair is going to be successful at all.
Mm,
I don't think he's actually. I don't think he thinks she's actually going to find the Suriel, or
mm,
even catch the Suriel.
yeah,
I think there's a reason why he says he's going to be nearby.
yeah,
I think because he's like, I'll save you.
yeah. Fair.
I and they may touch on this later. I don't know, but I also kind of love this idea of Lucien. First of all, thinking none of these things are going to work.
Yeah.
I'm getting a weird memory of him actually admitting that he did kind of hope she would die, and that he would find
Oh,
that they would find a new mortal.
but they have no time.
Yeah, so that may just be in my brain, and it might be in the book somewhere.
Yeah, you might be right.
But also, I kind of like this idea of thinking like maybe he's hoping the Suriel would tell her about the curse.
So I was talking to David about this today, and that's what he brought up. Is
Yeah,
like the Suriel would either tell her or like tell her a way to get around the curse or something like that. So like Lucian almost is kind of like using her as bait in a
yeah,
way, which I think that's probably the most likely answer. Because either that or like Lucian is just a fickle bitch because like he keeps flip flopping between like I like you, I don't like you, I like you, I don't
yeah,
like you. So which that very well could be the answer,
yeah.
honestly.
I think there's also a lot of possibilities that are just that like he wants to see like how much she can accomplish. He wants
Yeah.
to um maybe I think he's annoyed at Tamlin. I think they're both annoyed
That's
at
so
Tamlin.
true.
And so I
Yeah.
think and they're both, if anything, they're kind of both slightly petty bitches. So maybe because we talked about in the spoiler or the non-spoiler episode about how like she's for sure like wait doing this to like get back at Tamlin.
Yeah.
Right, because she's annoyed with him. And Lucian's annoyed with Tamlin because he won't fucking buck up and do what he needs to do.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he hopes that Tamlin will come like save her and they'll have this like romantic moment. Who knows?
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I also just feel like Lucian is just like, "God, fuck you two. Like, get it together. You
I think
know?
what's so funny to me is like these Fae who are immortal who have had hundreds, if not thousands of years to live, the lack of foresight from some of them.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
god.
come on.
And
Like,
the pettiness is so high.
The pettiness makes actual
Yeah,
sense to
no, the
me.
pettiness makes sense to me actually,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I definitely know the older I'm gonna get, the more petty I'm gonna get, because I've already gotten
Absolutely.
a lot pettier in my old age. But
Same.
but yeah, so that one does make sense to me, but I just think it's really funny because pettiness is also like so immature, and so it's just like kind of hilarious to think of these like 500-year-old like creatures walking about and just being like doing petty little shit to each other.
Also, I just thought of something that
Mhm.
actually would probably explain Lucian's pettiness. We should not forget this is the son of Helion.
Ugh. Yes. Yes!
No, I always forget
Always
that, and I'm like, it
forget!
explains so much. It explains so much. I cannot, because in one of the future books, they're gonna have that realization,
Oh,
right?
they do.
Or not realization, but like they're actually gonna
They're
like
gonna
talk about
talk
it.
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Oh my god.
wow, I mean, God, I just
Yeah,
hope it
no
doesn't end.
wonder Lucien is who he is.
Yeah.
Fuck. I
All I'm gonna
completely forgot. Okay, everything with Lucien now from the rest of the book, I'm just gonna be like,
Son of Helion.
Helion.
All I'm gonna say is like it better, and I won't say which series, it better not end up the same way that another
I will
I know
lose my
I will lose
mind.
it. I will
I
lose
swear to
it.
God, don't do that to us,
Nope.
Sarah.
She can't. She can't. I will be
Fuck.
so fucking angry if that
My
happens.
heart
I will
will
rage.
like you'll rage. What the fuck do
I
you think
know.
I'm gonna do?
Well, I mean, it depends on which, but if we're going by that series, we know who, and it's
Exactly,
no, nope,
exactly,
nope, nope, nope,
exactly.
nope. Throne of Glass
Anywho,
fans, you know, you know.
you know.
Well,
I'm
that being
so
said,
excited to finally meet the Suriel. I'm so excited. It's gonna be
my
so great.
favorite,
It's gonna be
my
so great.
favorite.
Our
Like,
chaotic queen.
it's gonna be so hard in the non-spoiler
Mm.
section not being able to talk about, because like when we first meet the Suriel,
Oh,
we don't
it's
really know how
no.
chaotic he is. Like,
No.
like
No, the
it's not
chaos
until the
doesn't really
next.
happen until the second time she catches him
Yeah,
or
and
them.
it's them. Yeah, actually, the Suriel doesn't. We don't know its gender, do
I
we?
don't think the Suriel has a gender,
I mean,
do
there's
they?
theories. There's theories about
Oh, yeah,
who the Suriel could be, which I'm so into that
yeah.
theory. Speaking of next week, okay, listeners, your homework for next week is chapters 14 through 16, where we will meet the Suriel. Yay!
Yay.
Also, we talked about this at the end of the last episode. If you feel called, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. That's where we are currently. We're going to look into a few others. But also, please rate and review if you would like. Ideally, hopefully, good ones.
Yeah.
But it does really help get us out there to other fans, other people who read ACOTAR. We know sort of how the algorithm we know there's an overlord algorithm that we must appease. So speaking of which, you can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Cauldron Save Us Pod.
Mhm.
And if you want to slide into our DMs, slide into our inbox, you can do it on any of those, but you can also email us at cauldronsaveus@gmail.com and say hi to us.
Yeah, and like really any constructive criticism you'd
Yeah.
like to give, like this is a thing that we started that like makes us happy, but we also want it to be nice to listen to and a fun ride
Yeah.
for everybody. So like I don't know if there's like things you want more of, things you want less
Yeah.
of, and if those things are symbiotic with us, then we'd love to make that stuff happen for you guys. So, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is
So,
so fun.
it was so fun. This was a good one.
It's
This was
always
nice.
like I always have such a fun time doing these.
I know. Me too. Me too. I'll like start off being like, okay, like nervous because I like want to make sure there's all these things that I want to say. But then like I feel like halfway through recording, I'm like, right. This is why Ariel and I are doing this. Like we could literally
Yeah.
do this for hours. This is so easy for us. Like this is how we talk about anything. Like this is not out of our like norm of how we speak to each other. So
You know how like back in the olden days they used to have those dancing competitions where it was like see how long you can dance, and people would dance for like 72 hours straight.
yes.
That could be us
We
talking
would
about ACOTAR.
win. We would win every time.
Absolutely.
Every time. Well, as always, you're welcome.
And we're sorry. Bye.
Bye.